Hi, this is Andrew Groh with the Missouri Society of CPAs. This is MOCPA Bar Talk, where we talk about the latest trends, news, and issues that matter to you the most. Let's get started. Today's episode of Bar Talk is brought to you by CPA Charge.
With CPA Charge, you can offer a variety of easy ways for clients to pay you in your office or online. Run transactions in your office, include a link to your secure payment page on all invoices, add your payment link to any client emails, and integrate CPA Charge with your website by adding a payment link. Your clients will love the convenience of multiple payment options, and you'll love getting paid faster and more reliably with CPA Charge. To learn more, call us today for a demo.
Hi, everybody. My name is Andrew Groh with MOCPA, and welcome to the next episode of MOCPA Bar Talk. Today, we're here with my friend Rafael Casas with Sage Accounting Solutions. He's our senior manager there, and we're going to have a great conversation around everything robotic process automation, RPA. Rafael, welcome to the show. It's good to see you again, and if you couldn't tell, I get excited about these types of conversations. Good to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And I appreciate the platform that you guys are putting out here for the innovation that you're putting out and the excitement and enthusiasm for the industry, for the profession. So it's awesome.
Yeah, thanks, Rafael. And for listeners at home, why don't you kind of introduce yourself and a little bit about your background and about Sage and what you do and what you and your team are doing.
Yeah, great. Love to. So Sage, is the market leader globally for, small business ERP accounting systems, HR, payroll. We have about 14,000 employees worldwide. So, it's a huge monster out there. And I, in particular, work for the Sage Account Solutions Group in the United States. So really helping to empower the profession with a larger ecosystem of services, technology, innovation, education, as well as helping the young professionals, from the grassroots, organic, helping the profession for the next 5 to 10 years and making accounting as cool as possible, and so from that perspective, we're really doing some amazing things. So I've been working in accounting and accounting technology and consulting and development and engineering for about 15 years, over 15 years working with small business, small firms, all the way to, top 200 firms, and then working with tier one companies around the world on different types of innovation, RPA technology, automation, development, engineering, SQL, Oracle, all that fun stuff. So it's good. I have all the scars to show it. So it's been a fun ride.
Well, welcome. So real quick, are you a CPA? Are you an accountant? Are you in the IT space? Are you a coder? What's kind of your professional background? Getting into your space.
Yeah, so I'm not a CPA, but I studied accounting in college, and then but I ended up moving quickly into the accounting technology pieces of it. So when I first started, over 15 years ago, I knew that there was a lot of guys that were really great on the business analysis piece, consulting, but not very good on the technical side, and vice versa. A lot of those technical folks you're not going to see them out in the trade shows. They're pretty awkward, developers, and they're socially awkward. But so there was a few of them, my mentors that were very good at both. So that's what I really focused on, being, good at having those, social communications and kind of being a liaison as well between the developers and speaking that and developing, and also being a consultant. So, I actually worked, full on functional and technical consulting. I did a lot of development, did a lot of Oracle, SQL, DBA work. So it really is just to be able to, I've worked in accounting, so I know accounting very well, but the technology is always something that's so much fun. And it's something that I've learned in jiu-jitsu, where it's really relevant in technology, is even in the profession, it's not that old nomenclature that everyone's saying go with the flow. It's flow with the go. Things are always changing, and that's something where you have people talk about of what's the thing that you can always, your weakness that you can always get better at. It's always technology, because it's always changing, and which I love. And those are the things that I think help wake me up. And I think a lot more people in the profession are focusing on those fintechs, on that technology to just elevate the business, elevate their clients.
Yeah, and thanks, and we're seeing it too. Our I think part of this invitation here and part of this year's podcast series, Bar Talk, has been driven by transformative technology, and RPA. What we're going to be talking about here is, of course, one of the main pillars of that's been identified in our profession as driving the technological advances. And we're going to we're going to have a great conversation today about that. Before we really get into that, some listeners of yours may be wondering kind of where we are. Let's kind of where we are. We're about 6 months into COVID-19 pandemic. It's why we're having a socially distant conversation instead of we love having guests and members and folks come into the studio here, but Rafael, can you share with our listeners and viewers a little bit about what you and Sage are talking about or hearing right now, 6 months into the pandemic, and what's top of mind for you all?
Yeah, no, great question. So, yeah, it's been a wild 6 months. It's felt like 6 years, to be honest. It's been, but a lot of the things that we've seen and been hearing from small businesses and profession and the accounting profession is that our clients need more than anything the business advisory piece. So you've seen, in order to get that for the business continuity portions for their firms and for their clients, it's acceleration of the cloud, it's acceleration and the ability to quickly determine what types of resources are available to them, not only for themselves or their clients, and the right resources. So, those were the biggest areas where we at Sage took it upon ourselves to build out our own major COVID hubs that have support business finders, that have PPP tools. The support business finder is really, really important and integral for businesses because they were logging into that and it would go through a series of questions and it would guide them depending on the industries that they were working in, the type of amount of clients, type of people, the amount of folks in the firms, and it would give them the right resources because, as you saw, there was so many different resources out there. It was hard to determine which was the best thing for you, for your business. So that was the biggest thing. And then again, looking towards what type of technologies for business continuity are going to help me out moving forward, because there was also a lot of firms that were already ready. And it wasn't even ready for a pandemic. They were much more advanced and elevated in their profession, having everything on the cloud, having good automation across the different product platforms. So this really didn't affect them a whole lot. But it really showed, where people stood when this thing hit.
So let me ask you this and follow up on that one. Have you and your team seen an acceleration from clients into moving into this space because of this pandemic, or are you just seeing the ones who were, like you just mentioned, were already on that cusp starting to make those transitions?
Well, actually, that's a good. There was some statistics from my RPA session that I just did for Boomer Technology Summit. That, God, I think there was there's over 100 people in there, and I think I'd say maybe 60 to 70 were already, from an RPA perspective, we're looking towards doing that. But automation, I'd say 90% was in their plans for their firm.
Wow.
Some sort of automation, that's bank feed automation, that's there's something like an auto entry automation to RPA. But we did see, especially from like a Sage Intact, that segment of the business, and even our Sage Business Cloud Accounting, which the acceleration of moving those all their platforms to the cloud was pushed. Whether when they were thinking of maybe doing that from a year or two, now is pushed up 6 months. So. But that's what's really was eye-opening, that there's a lot more, I would say more of the bigger firms that have started adopting this already and are further down the stage of having deeper levels of automation in their firms already. But a lot are thinking about it. I think it's just a lot of education that wasn't easily accessible to them yet. And so that's why there's fear-based stigma around it for some of those smaller firms.
Yeah, and that's great. And we're just a quick a word of encouragement for you. Keep up the great job and supporting our firms and businesses moving into that space and really showing them best practices on how to do that. And let's talk a little bit about that today here, which is, to me, I kind of nerd out on this stuff. So preface it right now, and if you've heard this show before, you've heard me say that I'm kind of a fanboy of these types of technologies. I know a little bit, probably enough to be dangerous. But Rafael, we're going to talk today about robotic process automation, RPA, your wheelhouse of expertise. Well, I already know how to use Excel, and I'm a power user, and I know how to build macros. What's the deal here? What is the difference between my power user experience and application use for Excel with macros to be able to pull and push data, and RPA as you all are building it and consulting with, and other firms are using? Where are we?
Yeah, so I think that actually is a great foundation that you have to be able to work with RPAs, because I always categorize it as just macros on steroids. Now, I've worked with macros. When you first talk like that, everyone's like, oh, okay, I know what a macro is. And then they immediately lose the fear of, oh, this is out of my wheelhouse. If you've done that, then that's really what they are. I call them macro on steroids because they have, there's different types of these bots that are available, but it's going to be like screen scraping macros. It's going to be APIs. There's a lot of different ways where maybe a basic macro is not going to be able to navigate between 4 or 5 different integrated systems like a bot would be able to. And so that's where you're able to kind of build out these different types of bots. And so my number one suggestion for any type of bot discussion, or even before talking about bots, is, again, business analysis and business requirements and business process improvement. Those are the only ways that any of these technologies that you have done some amazing sessions on, of blockchain, AI, and now RPA, none of these things work well because they're just vehicles. But none of these things work well if the driver has bad data. So but if you'd like, I can kind of get into the differences of these bots. There's different types of bots out there. There are different flavors. Even some of these bots that we think are new are old news in the community. So, but I can dig into that too if you'd like.
Yeah, and so what am I thinking? What if I go into my conversation, let's say, and we talk about these things, and I'll ask you over the course of this interview, maybe to parse out some considerations if I'm a CPA, maybe I'm an owner or a partner at a CPA firm, versus maybe even a CPA in a controller or CFO role, because I think maybe there's some different considerations there, right? Where do I start with the idea of RPA? How do I know if I need RPA?
Well, there's a couple things. One that's actually vendors have brought up in the market for businesses to determine where they would start. But I generally, rule of thumb is always start small. You have to do a proof of concept. So when I think about use cases to start, it would be master data things like inventory items, onboarding of inventory items, customers, vendors. Those are the things that actually start the good foundation of you having cleaner data to begin with. So that's where you would start. Some great use cases that I've seen of onboarding vendors with specific types of transactions. So, like, say, for instance, it's the information of the contracts or engagement letters, things are signed, and they're put onto an FTP site or any type of secure site. The bot will look for that from a listener and then start to create these bots according to the business, the actual business rules, not superseding them like in an API, but following the business rules so there's not junk data going in there. And then you can actually add additional business rules outside of maybe a system doesn't. You have additional layers of rules that you want that your accounting system or CRM doesn't have. You can put additional rule sets in there too. But helping bring in that type of information, attach it to the vendor, attach it to the customer, or make sure valuation methods are correct with inventory items, or even something small like filing a bot automatically filing $0 extensions. And those are other things that folks have used. But the idea is to really start small. You don't want to start complex, because that helps you build not only the practice to understand where the risks are involved, and you're not doing something so complex where you can cascade major issues across different parts of your business. And then you have a good proof of concept. You get how to be successful in this moving forward with your team. And then that's how you scale up. The other thing, though, that vendors have done, because there's about 3 or 4 different types of bots out there, they've created something like electronic RPAs, created discovery bots. So you can actually kind of deploy these thin bot clients onto every one of your staff members. I think at their lowest level of entry level, you get about 100 of these. So you can install them, and they're basically like process monitors, like Windows proc mods. And then will go through and look at all the clicks, everything that everyone is doing on each of those sessions, and it'll give you the analysis of, hey, look, this particular staff member is clicking here, copying and pasting here all day long, and this may be a great use case for a bot. And so it helps you out with the business analysis, because a lot of times folks at the executive level partners don't have time to sit there and work with all of these staff members to determine, and these staff members are doing this all day long, and they don't even know that they're doing that, So it helps. Those are areas that help speed up the business analysis quickly.
And a great conversation for the collision of business processes like this and ethics, right? So, well, you've got bots clicking and tracking clicks for individual team members. You outline a really great use case. Let's all make sure that that's all being used ethically too, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's another thing I can dig into. But you do want to, just like every other thing out there in technology, you never want to take the vendor's word for it. You always want to do the research on the security, SOC 2 compliance, AES. There's encryptions on the sitting data out there, GDPR, all that stuff. Because I have heard in the past where some people are like, these are big vendors, they know what they're doing, they're on it. You never want to take any of that for granted. You want to make sure, because that not only allows you as an IT team and you as a business to know that you've done the due diligence on your part, and then you can also, make sure to evangelize that to your clients, because that is the biggest trust factor. I can tell you a story later, but I've been involved with a cloud company that got completely ravaged by some Bitcoin. What else? Ransomwares, and those things that really affects your business. So another thing outside of RP is to always just do your due diligence on security too, because you don't want like you said, the ethics there. Edward Snowden on bots kind of thing getting out there, right?
A little scary to think about maybe, but it's definitely, these are definitely considerations that cybersecurity audits and risks. It's a huge thing in our profession, huge topic, and I think, as you mentioned, even before this session and conversations we've had, these technologies permeate our entire profession, our business operations, those types of things. So the same level of scrutiny that a business may have towards email, cybersecurity, same thing for bots and how that data is being pushed and pulled, right? And where it goes and who has access to those types of things and all of that. So good. And I'd like to stay on this one real quick and then move on to the next big topic, which I'm really excited to get into, which is, what you're seeing with implementation and use. And I think a good segue, if I'm thinking, do I need to explore RPA? How big of an operation really do I need to be? What are some of the criteria that, as you're looking at new client onboarding or those initial conversations, does it have to do with how many different systems I have, that my team or my businesses are using and operating at the same time? If I've got an enterprise management system that's relatively seamless, which we know they're not all seamless, right? You always have multiple systems talking and working and those types of things. Where are some of those lines and those considerations that you talk with clients about?
Yeah, great point. So I usually start out, at a hierarchy of one. There's the rule of thumb where if you have a process that you do manually that takes over 15 minutes, it should be scripted, and it can be scripted. That's just a basic kind of rule of thumb. But then you really, before what you talked about, the integrations is something that I always bring up. You first want to look at um, your business processes. What do you just do a kind of an audit of all of them? How many steps do they take? Redefine them. Look at if they're antiquated and they're grandfathered in, they don't even belong within your business anymore, your firm. That's where you really start before you even getting into the bots, because that's going to take a lot of work of building out proper standard operating procedures across the whole firm, across getting the buy-in from all the partners to work this way, and from all the locations to work this new way. And then part of it as well is within that process and within adding bots, you do have to look at the maintenance, because this is going to be just like the maintenance of the integrations that you have within your ERP systems. You've got certain types of maybe HR, payroll, third-party tax systems, or third-party customized e-commerce stuff. Those things, once they upgrade and you have a bot that's going through maybe one or two of those, that bot's going to have to be redefined through the API. So you that, along with understanding the maintenance, and that's why you don't get too complex if you don't have to in building the bot. But you also have to have someone that can be able to quickly maintain that bot if it does go through that, if it has to go through those processes. And then you also will look at your roadmap. Your roadmap as a firm. What am I doing in the next 5 years? Does this bot disable me from quickly moving into those avenues of technology, or that process? I've seen a lot of times where someone will build a bot or build automation, and it's so strict on a particular rule set, which they should be, but it's so strict that they didn't look at the next 5 years of maybe I'm going multi-legislature for different types of clients or different types of industries where I can't really have this bot do this anymore. I've got to redefine it. So you kind of have to be, really tight on the rule set, but also, have that ability to be adaptive within that bot when you need to. There's a lot, again, these things that you brought up, they're all things that you need to put in when you're doing a proper business requirement document for these, putting in the risks analysis there, not only from the current risk, the implementation risk, but from the risk for the next 5 years.
Yeah, it's great. It sounds like walking that line and of the risk and benefit analysis for any implementation and use is really really key. And I did want to touch again. We've heard over and over that the data portion, the front end data portion of the technologies that we've been focused on as a profession this year is so important, because what's the adage? Trash in, trash out, like some version of that. And it is, we hear it over and over again. And, maybe a topic for another time, but it's good that you brought that up again, and to ground our listeners and those considering these types of technologies that, like, correct me if I'm wrong, this is not a Band-Aid that will maybe fix bad data coming in, and maybe comment on that real quick, and then we'll move on to some really cool stuff about what you're seeing, with some of your clients actually using this technology.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's not a Band-Aid, but I think it's an actual good start moving forward to help facilitate the bad data that's constantly coming in, and help you again redefine those business processes. Like I've had, some clients in the past where they were letting their vendors do anything and everything, and so they had no boundaries with them or proper standard operating procedures with them. And so once we started implementing, they enforced them. They're like, look, we can't bend over backwards for every client, because It is making things much worse for us. It's making the audit much worse for us, and we're spending hours upon hours of cleaning things up. So, but one thing I do talk about in my session, just like you said with data, any one of these new technologies that come out, AI, blockchain, RPA, if you don't have the right holistic approach and good data involved, none of these things are going to be successful for you. And that's the biggest start of to be able to adopt any of these platforms.
Yeah, key point, Rafael. So moving on from a little bit of kind of like the introduction and maybe some considerations on if I need RPA or how I might consider having those conversations. What are some of the really cool, maybe 2 or 3 really cool case examples that you're seeing clients right now implement RPA for their business processes with some success?
So a couple of them that I've seen that have done really well that actually scale up is again, one is the vendor onboarding, helping with the vendor onboarding there with bringing over the types of specific data that is needed along with the associated documentation. That takes quite a bit. One is signature approvals for engagement letters that I know a firm had just recently done, where it was just the signing off of this took forever. And actually, Garrett Wagner, he did it in his firm, Garrett Wagner CPA out of New Jersey. He's actually a great friend of Dr. Sean. Okay. That's actually how I met Dr. Sean. And
friend of the show, yes.
Yeah, amazing guy. And so he said that his staff member that was doing this particular type of process, she was actually in tears of joy because it took so many hours away. It gave her so many hours back from having to do all these manual e-signing proposals. And then I've seen some where we've had the $0 extensions has been a really great one. And then the other use case that I wanted to talk about that's actually been really beneficial that I've seen is the tax management use case, where small firms will actually build out bot that'll be able to pull out the data from a database or a spreadsheet and then extract things like balance sheet information and then be able to scrape that and pull that and automatically put that in to your tax systems. So that way it's smaller firms that have to do large amounts of that type of transactions can just use a bot for that. And it also ensures a lot of the data accuracy there too, where they could build in numeric or alphanumeric type of business rules so bad data doesn't get uploaded into those tax systems. So those are a few that I've seen. There are definitely some much more complex ones that help do some data cleanup or help do a few things like elimination entries or doing a lot of like intercompany type transactions where they maybe don't have an ERP system, where the smaller systems don't allow them to do that. So that ultimately helps out with the month-end closing and year-end closing accuracy there.
We will return after a few words from our sponsor.
With CPA Charge, you can offer a variety of easy ways for clients to pay you in your office or online. Run transactions in your office, include a link to your secure payment page on all invoices, add your payment link to any client emails, and integrate CPA Charge with your website by adding a payment link. Your clients will love the convenience of multiple payment options, and you'll love getting paid faster and more reliably with CPA Charge. To learn more, call us today for a demo.
Some cool stuff, and we'd like to talk about maybe some applications in use, of course, for CPAs and CPA firms, right? Maybe what are 1 or 2 things that you're seeing, really maybe either large firms or even for consultants talking with clients about in this space and for RPA. What are CPA firms using this for? And then maybe let's talk a little bit about what some cool things you've seen in the business and industry sector too.
Usually the firms have been using a lot of those use cases. Do you mean as far as use cases or platforms? Would you?
Yeah, use cases. I mean, if I'm going in to say, okay, I'm not interested in RPAing away my team and jobs, right? But of course, this technology, we want to leverage and use to not just make their jobs easier, but allow them to move up that value chain and be more consultative. It's a refrain we've heard over and over again. Any wins that you've seen from clients or heard in that space where they've been able to do that? And I think you mentioned one, but are there any other ones?
Yeah. There's a lot. There's Bailey. I think maybe Witherman was another one that's been using it. There's quite some larger firms. So if you look at who are the bigger players, some of the larger firms like PwC, Big Four, are heavy in using it. And what this actually has done for them, and what I always evangelize, is it helps redefine the position, not taking away anyone's position. It's helping redefine and helping allow them to have more of that human touch and advisory services, and ultimately, have that better interaction from a business analysis standpoint or business partnership standpoint to their clients. Like Bailey has had a lot of success. We've had quite a few others that have done really, really well. And ultimately, to get to the point of value pricing or CAS, this is actually one of the areas, one of the prominent areas to get you to that point within your firm of building out some bots for some of these areas where they're pretty mundane and taking up a lot of hours. So what I would say is that within the culture of it, it's a redefinition of jobs. It's empowerment and redefinition of these jobs. And so that's where you want to bring in a lot of education to the firms and to the staff, because it's the same thing if you're bringing in a new accounting system and then those staff members don't know it. Some of them come in with fear. It's the same old, kind of fear-based issues that they come in with. But again, there's going to be a lot of different use cases depending on what they do in their firm. It's all a matter of using the types of getting the right team in place and then looking at the processes that they have in place. So again, everyone has different ideas, and every time I discuss with a big firm what they want, what they should do, what they would use a bot for, I tell about simple use cases, but they actually will have to go back and talk about, look, I have to go back now. I don't even really know where I would want to start yet, because we haven't done the BA work yet. And so before they even talk about that, they've got to go through all the refining, all the heartache to really see where would even make sense for them. And everyone has different areas. Some are much. I've seen some firms like Jackson Thornton go through some pretty complex bots from their first time with engagement letters and putting that information into Microsoft Teams from specific FTP sites, and then going through a whole workflow process of onboarding clients. So those take a lot longer, but generally, they get slapped in the face with, I have a lot more on my plate before I can start thinking about any type of use case just yet.
Right. That's fair. And it's also consistent with, with what Dr. Stein-Smith, what Dr. Seifert, what others, other experts in the transformative technology space are saying, which is in our profession for accountants, for CPAs, listen to these podcasts, take CPE course on it, get a base level understanding, and then start thinking about application and use. And not from maybe this is going to come and take our jobs perspective, but from it's going to allow us to do all of these other more high-end, bigger, better, more client-facing, client-centric value propositions. And to me, that's exciting. It's where I think I've seen this profession go over the last 15 years that we've been a part of it. And it seems like, it's why I asked earlier during the pandemic discussion, have we seen an acceleration here? I think we are, but just kind of anecdotally, not just with this conversation here, but with a lot of other conversations that we're having. So.
Exciting. Yeah, no, I definitely think they are. It's exciting. It definitely has been accelerating quite a bit, and it's really great to see.
So let me ask, let's say Rafael, this conversation sounds fantastic. I'm ready to go get my bot. And I think I asked this question at one of the other podcasts. Am I going to go down to Office Depot and buy my bot off the shelf and say, all right, I'll take my bot on a leash and bring it back to my office and kind of, install it? Is that the way it works? How do you and your team, not just on the consulting, but on the implementation or coding for the bots, or building the bots? Maybe tell us a little bit about how that works and where do I go if I'm ready to have these conversations with professionals? Yeah.
So there's a couple areas here where you have to pay attention to. So one, A lot of the big vendors like Electronic RPA, who Sage is actually partnered with, or Pegasus, Pegasystems, UiPath, Automation Anywhere, they have developer communities. Developer communities allow you to kind of have like a sandbox, basically a free RPA platform. It's not meant for production, but you can use it to kind of really work through your things within your firm, and work through Sandbox and just kind of play around with it. Someone like Electronic has a 2-week free trial that you can use on their platform. But another movement that's part of this as well. So not only going straight to the vendors and consultants like myself and other ones, implementation consultants can help you find the right vendor, the right platform that would work for you. But there's a movement in this whole segment, or this whole area of technology, called low code or no code movement. So what these RPA vendors are doing, and what I talk about, is that you don't necessarily have to be a developer to adopt these types of technologies, because a lot of them are building out these no code, low code. So almost like the experience that you have with BI tools, where there's functions already built out, you drag and drop what you want to do in your BI tools. The same thing here. So you'll have, like, Electronic has built out some really great sub programs that are already built out. You just have to put in some basic parameters within these types of things, like login credentials or company client credentials, or those types of simple information. But where it's already going through your Microsoft 365, or going through your accounting system, or going through specific systems, or triggering specific emails if you're doing reminder management, letter bots, or those kind of things. So what that allows you to do is it just kind of drag and drop these types of login executions to make it much easier. That's like the low code, no code movement that's happening, which makes it much more tangible for smaller firms that don't have developers. But even some of these bigger, platforms, where they're using so much more complicated development platforms like C#, which is something I've worked in for many years, outside of like an Electronic RPA, which is using JavaScript, which if you wanted to, you can spend very little money on a junior JavaScript developer to help you build something out really fast, and then you're done with it, and you really aren't losing an arm and a leg. But the other area of this implementation piece, outside of just the vendor and implementation, is to really invest too, if you haven't, on the business process piece of learning either agile methodologies, learning maybe joining a black belt, Six Sigma, lean project management or business process type of courses. Like Boomer Consulting does a great one. These are things that are just going to help you across all of your implementations and as a firm. So it's both are equally important in investing time in, but those would be the two areas that I would focus on, because that sets you up for success across any innovation.
Yeah, that's great, and that's interesting that I joked about going down to Office Depot, but it sounds like maybe we're starting to head that direction with what you were just sharing there. And I guess in my mind, I thought if I've built out my own enterprise system, or I've cobbled together 7 different systems, and I'm a large organization, how might I bridge those together? But it sounds to me like, maybe those larger systems are creating these toolboxes where it makes it easier for end users to do these plug and play type RPA systems, which is really neat.
Yes, they definitely are, because they know that, it's not, none of this has been reachable to them. Everyone's like, this is just out of my range. There's no way, I can't afford developers for this stuff, and it's too complex, the maintenance too complex, and building out these things is just going to take too much time. But essentially, if you have the right team in place and you're working with the right platform for you, you can get these bots up and running, generally in about a 2-month time range if you do it the right way. But as opposed to some other avenues of automation, which can take a lot longer.
Yeah.
But they're getting to that point. They're already out there where it's a bit more plug and play, a less headache, and it's just they know the community in the SMB, where they're being able to reach to them more and know that they can build these types of things on their own.
That's great. And maybe a great transition to, kind of the collision of maybe understanding code a little bit. How much of this conversation would you suggest that CPAs, that our profession, really needs to understand to be able to advise, to be able to implement, to be able to leverage, and then be able to kind of analyze for that what I think our profession is trying to say is use these tools for higher end types of operations and client service and business operations. Kind of where is that collision right now, maybe at the university level, young professional level, and kind of in our profession in general?
Well, yeah, one thing that I would say first is that for people to have the mindset that this is not just like a low level type of innovation where it's not going to just only affect the bottom line. In fact, it really is something where you can look at from an executive level, executive business processes. So you don't want to put that in a box that it's just going to take away these low level tasks. There's a lot of ways that innovation can be done, but I think, from a young professional level, there's a lot more technology based folks and that's something that I'm working on eventually with the young professionals in the Education Alliance program to bring these types of new innovations that are in fintech and that are in the accounting technology where, I'll probably get off that tangent here, but that the accounting profession, doesn't always get a fair shake of how incredibly talented they are and how much work and how brilliant they are. And by them using these types of technologies in the right way, it allows them to be able to share those types of brilliance that they have to the clients that really need it, and moving away from these mundane tasks that they do every day. And so going out for the young professionals, for them to understand that these are the things that are happening with the profession, from blockchain AI to RPA to certain types of automation, and for it to be, really attractive to them, where it's, this is really cool stuff, what's going on. So where folks will be like, we'll go out and have these discussions, and MIS, kids are like, oh wow, there's some really cool things happening there. I kind of want to shift and pivot to work on that area. But I think as the young professionals come up, even the young professionals right now, for a while it's been like pulling teeth. Because I think there's not a lot of education being spread out, or not a lot of folks that have that type of expertise in these particular areas. So it's hard to kind of translate that to a way where it's understandable. But I think it's getting there, and there's a lot of firms that are really starting to adopt and understand that there's a lot that takes place in this transition, but there's a lot of benefits that they're seeing. So yeah, I think the young professionals are taking over. Really, everyone's very much, the innovative focus and treating everything like a fintech and knowing where the profession's going.
Yeah, and it's exactly kind of on point with what we're hearing, and trying to share also is this. It feels like there's an energy around new tech in our profession, and I think what it really means for the profession long term. I don't want to get esoteric here, but I think what we're trying to do in this conversation and in other conversations and as a profession is try to actualize the vision of CPAs of the future. And right now we know there's a convergence of these conversations. It's not just here, it's the AI CPA, it's at the NASBA, it changes to the CPA exam, how firms and businesses are operating all up and down the line. So it's a great time, I think, to be in our profession. It's really exciting, and I think it's a sea change. I think we're in the middle of a sea change about how our profession operates. It may be a little bit of the Wild West right now, but we're converging, I think, over time into best practices and standard operating procedures. So.
Yeah. That's one really great point that I want to touch on was, everyone talking about don't think of it as your accounting firm, but a business, an accounting business, because there's so much more that you're doing, so much more innovation that you can bring in, and that's what's been great of having just a different mindset as to how to treat your business as a whole, and that's what's been great. Like when you talk about all the new technologies, Jason Stats CPA just launched maybe about 4 weeks ago, something called Launch.fa, Launch for Accountants, and he basically has a digest every week of all the new stuff that's coming out. So, otherwise it's really difficult to figure out what's coming out. There's so many things happening here left and right. So if you want to start to understand or just to see the kind of things out there, just to get a gander of it, definitely subscribe to that digest. But those are some things that will really help you. It's just kind of get the education of what's out there and what you should be doing.
Yeah, and this conversation, I'd love it. So, maybe it's a bonus session, Mrs. Producer, but 5G, we know is where the 5G technology right now is where conversations around RPA blockchain were maybe even 4 years ago. And there's some other really, really interesting, new technologies coming up, deep AI, deep learning, those types of things. I wanted to, really, give you props for a conversation we had in front of this interview about your thoughts on tech stacking. And it was really as kind of an eye-opening conversation we had before this, and interesting. We've taken actually that idea back to a couple of different groups. We've asked a couple different groups about, for instance, how does tech stacking play into intangible asset valuation, those types of things. And we got a lot of head scratching, like we're not really sure, but we know that it's valuable. So really, since it was kind of, we heard it from you first, can you share with, the show and the audience a little bit about what you're seeing with tech stacking, the importance there, and what you see in the future for, and again, what is it, and how do you see that playing out?
Yeah, this is actually a really great topic that I've seen a lot of the innovative accountants talk about, where you see a lot of M&A that's happened with larger firms getting bigger firms, and they're not looking necessarily to just get your clients. They're looking for the tech stack that you've built out within your firm. That can be from your accounting to your HR to your payroll to all your third-party tech stacks that really build out a comprehensive automated workflow that's really easy for them to scale as a firm. And then they're not doing it, even though they're a larger firm, they're not doing that kind of work, and they want to adopt that tech stack that's already in place. So that's where the value comes, and that's why people talk about you need to treat your business, your firm like a business, like a fintech, and have a really solid tech stack, because that again has a lot of avenues of opportunity and positivity, because you're not only able to attract maybe an M&A like that, but you're able to attract the young professionals that go and look in your firm and be like, oh wow, these guys have it all together. It's not antiquated, grandfathered stuff, because that's a huge area of concern of finding the good talent. The good talent, smart young professionals are not going to go into a firm and be like, yeah, this is not for me. Like, these guys are not really forefront. They're not innovative or progressive. They don't have that cool, innovative mindset or culture, and it really wouldn't fit for what I'm trying to do. So, those are the things where you can not only cultivate, because those firms are also looking for some good culture, cultivated, innovative culture, and can get new talent in. And that's where that's really difficult, to get that really good, innovative talent where they're born into the digital age.
Yeah, and it's a brand new. I think it actually goes hand in glove, and it was fun. It was interesting where the business valuation expert was kind of scratching his head about, well, it's a great point, because we have conversations all the time in our profession about kind of in the BV space, these different attributes or kind of points of valuation, and over time those things kind of change. What's most important, what's most valuable, and those types of things, right? And you just mentioned it, over the last several years with M&A activities, especially in the public practice space, talent has gone way up that valuation chain for merger and acquisition activity. I think tech stacking is starting to move up, if not one of those top 3 or 4 now. And maybe even just 10 years ago was all about maybe the client, the multiple of, how much money am I bringing in on a client book of business. And that's now like tier like 4 considerations for business valuation is really interesting.
Right. Right. Yeah. And those people that are the high revenue, revenue generating clients, they could be terrible clients if you're only keeping them around for, once you start doing this, you could start bringing in, even, the better clients for the price point, the price value that you're bringing, the automation that you're bringing, the tech stack that you're bringing in. So that's all something that actually my esteemed colleague at Class talks about a lot within value pricing. Doing all these redefinitions of innovation outside of technology within just a business mindset that, couples perfectly with the type of tech stacks that someone's going to be looking to build out.
That's fantastic. And I love talking about this type of stuff. And I know we're nearing the end of the interview. I did want to say, thank you so much for joining us. And what did we miss real quick? Is there something that, you're really passionate about? You talked about coaching young professionals. We talked a little bit about in that space, the CPA of the future and the collision of new technology, innovative technology, and accounting specifically. Maybe one other thing. What else are you really passionate about that you'd like to share with our audience?
Well, I would just say, I think the key to all of this is really just educating yourself, and just spending the time and educating yourself with these types of